There's so many different disciplines within the world of dog training. What about dog training do you get most excited about?
At this point in my life, I think it's really about education. I love communicating with people. I love hearing where they're at, what they're thinking about.
Denise Fenzi is an internationally respected dog trainer, competitor, and founder of the Fenzi Dog Sports Academy. With titles across obedience, tracking, herding, agility, and more, Denise is known for her precision training and her groundbreaking work in motivational no-force methods for sport dogs.
I actually really like people. I know some dog trainers don't seem to like people too much. I don't have that problem, which is a really good thing because I find it equally interesting to try to figure out how do I communicate to this person with their skills based on the limitations that this person brings to the table, whatever they might be. How can we still get there? When your dog really likes you, just wants to spend time with you, they spend a lot of energy trying to get it right because they like the game you're playing together.
There's so many different disciplines within the world of dog training. What about dog training do you get most excited about?
At this point in my life, I think it's really about education. I love communicating with people. I love hearing where they're at, what they're thinking about. I work very, very hard to think through what I'm going to say and give a sort of a balanced perspective on whatever topic is in front of me. But I really believe that when people have information, that over time they make really good decisions. They just need the information. So on my Facebook or Instagram, almost every day, I try to put out some training content, which is this is what I'm working on today. I generally don't edit my content, so you get a minute or two of the thing. And I try to provide some kind of a caption to give people perspective because rarely is the answer for me the same as the answer for you. But I think if you do it enough, people start saying, wow, she handled this dog 5 different ways and it all looked like the same circumstance to me. Why is that? And they start learning how to recognize subtle differences. So education is where my heart is right now.
Have you heard the same? I'm sure you've heard the same. Lots of dog trainers will say, like, oh, the dog's the easy part. The clients are usually the more challenging part of being a dog trainer, which I think is true in a sense where the more you train and the more you work with dogs, working with the dogs does not necessarily become easy, but you have such a large frame of reference that you're able to adjust on the spot. And you've handled so many dogs that it does start to become easier. And I think something that, at least for me, keeps it so interesting is trying to transfer that information over to other people. Is that something you noticed as well?
Yeah, I actually really like people. I know some dog trainers don't seem to like people too much. I don't have that problem, which is a really good thing because I find it equally interesting to try to figure out how do I communicate to this person with their skills, what it is I need. And I also find it really interesting to think about based on the limitations that this person brings to the table, whatever they might be, how can we still get there? So they may not have the foundation I put on my dogs. Okay, fine. In seminars, you get very, very good at this. And I did seminars for a long time. I don't anymore, but I did many, many, many seminars. And I actually, it's fascinating because somebody stands up in front of you. You have zero background on this person, and they have some problems. So they don't have your knowledge, they don't have your skill set, and now you got to come up with something. You're going to have to, in like 3 seconds, look at them, look at that dog, and say, all right, this is the direction we're going to go, because there are so many ways to get where you want to go. It's more about finding one that's going to resonate with this team in front of you. And yeah, it's a lifetime project. You'll never run out of challenges if you're training dogs.
And how come you don't do seminars anymore?
Well, the first thing was I had an old dog who was special, and she was 15 and a half. And I was scheduling seminars about a year out. And I realized that there was a really good chance I would be traveling when she died. And I just didn't want that to
Mm.
happen. I didn't want my family to go through that. And so I decided to pull back. And at that time, as I pulled back, I realized that I love teaching, but I don't love traveling. And, you come in at 1 or 2 in the morning because the flight's delayed, and you get up at 6, and then you come home when you get back on the weekend, and you still have your clients, your family, your responsibilities. Um, And at that time, I had started my online school. And just in terms of the number of people I could touch, I realized that my time spent online was doing what I cared about, which is educating much more impactfully. Because in a seminar, you might have, let's say 10 or 15 working spots. So you're helping those 10 or 15 people directly with their dogs. And then however many auditors happen to be there. Online, you can have hundreds in one sitting, in one episode, classroom, webinar, whatever. The sheer quantity of capacity to educate is just that much greater.
And how would you, if you don't mind me asking, because I'm starting to do more seminars myself and I really enjoy them. I think they're a lot of fun, but they are also stressful. I want to make sure that I'm providing something that's very useful for those that are coming in and it's helpful and I'm not wasting their time and they're leaving with something that they can continue to use, whether it's within their profession or just with their dogs, their family dogs, depending on if they're a professional dog trainer or not. How would you structure your seminar? Would you go over your guiding principles and then start working with each dog, or did you have a different format, or would you just adjust based on the dogs that you saw in the seminar?
Oh, that's a hard question because I taught a lot of different things. So I think I was most well known for teaching relationship and play. I love that topic and I've been doing it for a very long time. Um, that was very new to the AKC world 30 years ago when I started teaching. And they just had never, they couldn't quite grasp the idea that you could use a toy or a ball to motivate behaviors. And I couldn't quite grasp how they didn't know that. Because I came from a protection background where it's pretty typical to use toys to
Yeah.
motivate, especially now. Maybe it's a little different. It's very different now than it was when I started, but it's that was very familiar and comfortable to me. In those seminars, I started with a couple of hours of lecture because I really needed, with a lot of, not initially video, because nowadays you carry your computer everywhere and that wasn't true then, but a lot of talking through what I wanted to see. I used to travel with a dog until they lost her one too many times. And I said, that's not working for me anymore. So I would use my dog to demonstrate specific principles. After that, then video options became the way to go. I didn't need to bring a dog anymore. Switched over to video examples. So the first couple hours was very heavy on lecture, very specific to the skill and the play and relationship skills. And then I always work dogs individually because I really need to see what you're doing. People like to be on the floor. They like to have 10 dogs out at a time. They think that the more time they spend on the floor, the better the seminar was, whether they learned anything or not. Doesn't seem to matter too much. So people want to be on the floor. The problem is if you're doing it wrong, it's not helpful that I'm there. So I would take people one at a time with a timer. I'm extremely good in my head at keeping track of how much time I spend. You come out, you practice the thing. I tell you what I want to see the next time you go back. The next one comes out. I was notorious for no breaks. I just keep going. Go. I will go until we're done. If that's late at night, the host may not love me, but you know what? I'm going to go until everybody's content. So that would be a
Mm.
standard sort of relationship-based seminar. If I was doing more of an obedience seminar, which I happen to love, that's my personal love, there were two ways I could do it, but most of the time it ends up being all of the time is divided by the number of people in the room. And then I pull out each dog twice. So the dog comes out, we look at the thing. I do all of my talking when people are in their seats. I don't want to, the dog doesn't need to participate. So bringing a person and a dog up in front of me and spending 5 minutes talking is not really healthy for the dog. So I'm
Mm.
like, sit there. Also, people are so nervous. Oh my God. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I am very, very sympathetic. And so if they can sit while they talk to me, I'm like, keep your dog in the crate. Let's just talk. You just sit there and let's just talk. That helps them start to relax and they get the wobble out and the scared before they ever stand up and get their dog. And then I give them very clear structure for the first minute. I tell them exactly what they're going to do from the moment they take that dog out until they get in front of me, because that structure lessens the nervousness and makes the dog feel like somebody's in control. I don't want the dog feeling alone because the owner is now staring at me. I think that's bad dog training. So I tell them what I want to see in the first minute. And over time, I started saying, this is how I want you to get to the ring with your dog based on what you told me. If I don't like something from their seat to the ring, I'll say, wow, that's excellent. I'm going to have you put your dog back in the crate. We're going to make a tweak and we're going to start over. They put their dog back in the crate. They sit back down and I tell them what I saw and why I want it done differently. And they come back out. And the reason I do this is it allows them not to have to multitask. They can hear me. They can listen to my
Mm.
thoughts. They can ask me questions. And then when they get the dog out, they are clear. So you don't end up in a situation where you're like, wait, not like that, because the dog is just coming along for the ride. I want you clear. And then usually once I got them in the ring, my first set of instructions was usually for a couple of minutes, I say, I want you to work with your dog however is most comfortable, however you might do it on your own, but I want your rate of reinforcement to be extremely high. And I'm not going to pay attention to this part. I'm going to talk to people about whatever topic flies into my head. You are on your own for a few minutes. And the
Mm,
reason I do that is it allows them to move their bodies and get the adrenaline out. And the reason I tell them high rate of reinforcement is so that they feel like they have permission to be playful. So if toy is your thing, I want you to practice playing with your dog. I'm not a part of this picture. Now, in fairness, we all know that I've got an eye on what's going on out there because I'm getting a lot of information at that time without them feeling like they're on stage. So I'll be
mm,
answering questions from people and my eye is kind of out and I'm keeping an eye until I think the person is going to be okay. And then usually I've already predetermined what do you want to do with your dog while you and I talk when you're out here? Because the dog is not going to wander. You can do a downstay, you can do a tether, you can put your dog in contact if that's something your dog understands. You can have somebody else come and hold your dog, or you can put your dog in a crate. You pick. We've already decided the answer. Now do that thing. And the reason is I will always find things I want to work on super fast. So there's two ways people come out. One is, this is my problem, this is what I want. And the other is, I don't know what I want to work on. Now that second one, I'll know what you need to work on in about 3 seconds flat. It doesn't take too long to go, oh, well, we have a list, but I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure that after that first few minutes, that when I say, all right, I want you to down your dog or put your dog in the crate and now let's have a chat. And then I say, based on what I saw, I'm going to have you do this, whatever. And then every single time they try it out, I'm like, super. Now I want you to down your dog, put your dog in the crate. Like I rarely give feedback on the fly in the sense of while they're doing it. So if their hand position is incorrect, I'll say, okay, that's excellent. Now let's put your dog on it down. And now I'm going to be your dog and I'm going to tweak this one thing. Rather than while they're doing it, say, bring your hand back, bring your hand up, because I don't find that people do that very well. I think they just get nervous and stressed and they don't remember. I would much rather stop and then reorient. I might get something super minor. But if it's something where they're actually going to have to think for a second or ask me a question, then the dog doesn't need to participate. So I put a tremendous amount of structure around people when they come out. I will, especially in a conference type situation where you don't have a lot of time per person, I will have people do a thing, and then I will tell that person, all right, your dog is social, dog okay with other dogs. Dogs are all good off leash. These are more advanced dogs, super. I want you to take your dog and I'll have a second ring and I'll say, I want you to go over there now and practice. That one thing we did, you're going to practice pivots or whatever. And then the next working dog, I'll start talking to them and then I'll bring them onto the field and I'll work with them individually. And then the first team rotates out. The second team can stay on the area in their area so they get to keep practicing. And you keep it going so that you can have one person on deck, one in the ring, and it allows more people an opportunity to spend time on the floor while you concentrate. And then at the end, I might come back around and say, did you have any questions that came up when you were practicing on their own? So I would probably do that when the whole group was back to sitting down.
Hey, thanks for watching today's episode. I want to take a quick moment and let those of you know who are interested that I offer virtual training sessions. Often people will sign up and they'll tell me they had no idea and they found out and they were very excited to schedule a lesson. So I want to let you know that that is available if it's something that you're interested in. If you need help with basic obedience, behavioral modification, if you're an aspiring dog trainer and you want some tips, pointers, direction to help you on your journey, I'm happy to do that. The link is in the description of this video. I also want to give a huge thank you to German Shepherd Shop for sponsoring today's episode. It's veteran owned, located here in the United States. It's where I get most of my training gear. It's high quality, fantastic customer service, and you get 10% off if you use the coupon code NATE. All right, thanks again. Let's get back to the episode. When you were talking about putting the dog into the crate, do you have an extra crate that you keep in the ring or where they're training, or do they take the dog back to their crate?
You know what? It depends on the structure. So some places dogs are crated. Most of the things I was teaching were actually taught inside, and they have an area for people and dogs, and then they have the working areas. Sometimes you're on a big field, so it's really going to depend. trying to think off the top of my head, they usually use their own crate. And it's not even like, as I was speaking, I was also realizing it's also different if it's the thing where I present and everybody does exactly the same thing. I'll run a different structure than if I present and each person does something individually. When they're all doing the same thing, there's a lot less talking to each individual before they come out because they know what the plan is. And they
Mhm.
just come out, do the thing, and go back. But especially when you're doing more handler's choice kind of stuff, which I love, love, love to do, they're hard to do. And the reason they're hard is the host has to make a certain amount of money. So I charge a flat fee. People don't want to audit handler choice events. They're just not interested in other people's problems, which is an enormous error, but that's another story. They want more generic stuff that they think applies to them. And the problem you run into is it's really auditors that create the income. The general pricing strategy, at least when I was doing it, was working spots covered expenses. Auditors were your additional
Mm.
what you might bring in. And it's very easy to sell the working spots in handler's choice. It's the most popular option, but it's not popular for auditing. So I couldn't do them very often because that didn't allow the host to make any money.
I always found that interesting too, because anytime I've gone to a seminar, I prefer the audit spot because of that additional pressure of coming on stage. And I'd rather sit back, figure out what everyone else is working on, analyze it myself, take notes, and then figure out what I like and use that in my training later on without that additional pressure. Even when I was going through school to learn how to be a dog trainer, one of my first mentors was Tom Rose. Anytime he watched me train, I messed up everything. It was that
Yeah.
additional pressure of him sitting there staring at me, and then I'd be looking
Yeah.
at him going, "Tom, I promise I'm better than what you're seeing."
You know what I tell people when they're in front of me? I'm like, look, I know you're nervous and I know you didn't spend all that money to come in here and not listen to me. So I can tell you right off the bat, we're on the same team here. And usually, and this is, I tell them, you are not going to be able to wait for your second turn. You are going to have a good time. I do not embarrass anyone. I promise you, you are going to be excited for your second turn. And it is true because I go to a lot of trouble to make sure people feel good about what they've done. Like when you make mistakes, I don't usually tell you. And it's actually very interesting. It's the same way I train a dog. So if my dog does something I don't like, I just come around and find another way to do it. So I do this with people a lot. So I might say something like, all right, I want you to move your hand back just a bit and let's try that. And then they don't move their hand back. So the next time I say, okay, that was super. Now I want you to put your thumb on the seam of your pants. Let's do that. I don't even tell them that the first time was wrong. I just keep working it until I find the words that make sense. And because
Mm.
they don't know that they did it wrong the first time, they think they're right every time. They get more and more and more confident. And that makes them more and more correct. And it's people are like, I, auditors will often come up afterwards and say, it took me a while to figure out what you were doing, but that really worked for you. Now, when they're done, I might come around and say, hey, a couple things we want to think about here. If your feet go one direction and your shoulders go another, it's super hard for your dog to follow you. So what kind of things can we talk about? What kind of things can we do to make that muscle memory? So a super simple thing, if people are very abrupt when they stop, and then that makes the dog jerk forward and come back, you lose points for that. So what I tell people is, all right, that's great. You want to work on halt? Super. First thing I want to do is I want you to practice walking and I want you to be so quiet that when I say halt, I don't want to hear your feet. Now, without doing anything else, if you tell somebody that, they will use the correct footwork that will cause their dog to have a nice smooth halt. So anytime you can address a challenge without telling them that because if you tell them, take one full step with your right leg, a short step with your left leg, and bring your right leg up to your left, they get so busy trying to
Mm.
remember that and putting their feet down that it's worse than where you started. And then the dog is like, what's going on? If you tell them, I don't want to hear your feet, I want you to be super quiet, and you hear their feet, you say, that was a really good try. I think I heard your foot. Try again. And then they will naturally do it correctly. You practice
That's
that a few
very
times.
interesting.
Yeah, you do that a few times. And then at some point I say, okay, look, I want you to watch the video when you go home, because I tell everybody to video their tape, their session. And I want you to notice the footwork you use. Now, the important part is not the footwork. It will come automatically. But I want you to just know it. I want you to know what you're doing. And it's the same thing like when I have people heal, I'll have them use me as the dog. or I'll use them as the dog, which creates massive sympathy for their dog in zero time. I'll tell you, if somebody doesn't see their dog's perspective, I can get it real quick. So I'll have them do things like that. And then afterwards, I'll say, now let's watch the video together. And I want you to notice how your feet mirrored mine. That is what your dog's feet are going to do. You don't even have to think about teaching them to cross over. If you use your body correctly, your dog will automatically mirror your body. And then they go back and they look and they're like, that's amazing. Whereas if I had told them, I want you to mirror my footwork, they would have been so busy staring at my feet that they would have made a mess of it. Whereas if they just follow my body the way I tell them to, watch my shoulders, watch my head, I'm going to tell you with my face where I'm going. If they learn to do that, the footwork comes without effort. So the more I can do things where I don't have to tell them exactly what they're doing until later, if they're curious, the more effective I find they are.
It's really smart. And it makes me think one of my buddies, and this is relevant, is a director. I used to live in LA and I did post production for a while before getting into dog training. And he was telling me about a scene that he was working on. And the guy just couldn't do what he was telling him to do. And he thought, how can I get him to perform the way that I want? Because it was like a horror movie and the guy was supposed to come off as really creepy. And what ended up working was he said, I want you, when you say your lines, pretend like you're telling me a secret. And then when he did that, instead of thinking about being creepy and delivering all that, he just thought about, okay, I'm going to tell a secret and I'm going to whisper it. And it turned out perfectly, he said. And so I find that really interesting because sometimes when we try to say exactly what to do, the exact mechanics, as you said, now they're overthinking it. They're not paying attention to the dog as much. They're looking at their footwork, and then it doesn't end up working out as well. Something else you said was you'll often go over some of your main principles, or you'll spend 2 hours talking about your system, perhaps. What exactly is it in those 2 hours? Are there certain things that you really want people to understand before they start working with their dog? I know we don't have 2 hours to cover all of that, but what are some
Yeah.
of the key things that you really want people to understand?
Boy, that's so hard because it really depends on what seminar we're talking about. So if it's a
Let's do
play seminar,
obedience
I'm going to obedience.
or play.
I'd
No,
be
since you
very
really, I mean, I love play too.
play is I do. I love play. Play. I talk a lot about the mechanics of being safe. So we talk about like
Mm.
what are you doing with your body? Are your arms shock absorbers? Where is the ball? Where's the dog? I talk about tension and motion and how that impacts the dog. I talk about rebiting. So it's more just a big picture of that. I talk about not telling your dog if you don't like what you get. It's not really the dog's fault if you don't know what you're doing yet. So let's not have that conversation with the dog. Um, I talk about the predatory sequence, right? You're out in the forest and these are the things you're going to see. This is hunt drive. This is prey drive. This is the point at which your dog can't hear you anymore. This is the point at which they're biting. Now, where's your dog strong in that sequence? Let's look at it, right? And let's see what we can strengthen, what we can weaken. So it's more big picture general. And then when their dog comes out, then we can talk more specifically about what I'm seeing and why. We talk about toy selection and why, how that might impact what you choose to do. How big is the dog? That's probably more the direction I go. I spend a lot of time on the relationship building aspect of toy play because to me, that's like, so for example, I have a dog with me that I'm going to compete with this weekend. And I really don't use toys to reinforce his behavior anymore. I use toys because it's fun. So maybe I just stop training and we just play, right? Because playing is fun. And then we train. I don't necessarily use toys as reinforcers at this stage in his training. I absolutely do when they're learning, but eventually it's just something I do with the dog for fun. And so I would talk about things like that from the relationship because people get very wound up in yeah, but how is this going to help my healing? Yeah, but, and I'm like, you know what? When your dog really likes you, just wants to spend time with you, they spend a lot of energy trying to get it right because they like the game you're playing together. So my goal is usually to try to get people a little bit more fixated on the big picture goal that we're here to have a good time. And then if it's a more sophisticated group, then we can get more into mechanics. And if it's even a more sophisticated group, then we get into the little tiny details that you got to be a special person to like enjoy that conversation. I love that conversation, but a lot of people are just like, I just want to qualify. So I'm like,
Mm.
that's fine. Let's figure out what that might look like. One of the decoys I bring out, Joachim Duvat is a ring decoy, and he comes out to my place on occasion. And something he said once that kind of stuck with me. He said, I'm not here to change your program. I'm here to figure out what your program is and to progress your training. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to say because I I don't go into a situation and say, well, this is how you have to do it. What I really do is try to figure out what you got. And then I try to figure out from there, what can I do to improve it for you? And I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at looking at something and saying, all right, these are the kind of things I'm seeing. But I don't really come in with a philosophy. I don't really come in and try to tell people how they should do it. I might point out where, as I'm looking at something, I might say, here's a couple of foundation skills you might want to pick up because you don't have them. And there's a lot of fun things we could do if you did. But I don't really try because they aren't going to have my foundation. I mean, when I was teaching obedience, back when I was doing that, kind of no one was doing it as a positive reinforcement event. They just weren't. So I would be at a trial, and this is going back, 30 years, and there's a pretty good chance I was the only person there who was doing it the way I did it. So it's not realistic to go into a seminar situation and expect people to have the foundation I have. They don't. What I do have, though, is the ability to look at their situation and say, here are things that are going to help you move forward. And yes, they come out of my way of looking at things, and they're not big. They're not going to give you everything, but they're going to improve your score. They're going to improve the fun you're having with your dog. Hopefully they're going to improve your relationship, and hopefully they'll make you a little curious about what else you might be able to improve down the road. So I don't actually have a system of training. I just have a lot of things I try to teach dogs. And then the two dogs I have now, or the three dogs, they just seriously could not be more different. I have a very strong, independent, he's a lot of dog, Belgian Shepherd. So he's pushing 80 pounds. And he takes every brain cell I have when I'm out in public with him. And then I have a new young border collie who came from a kind of a situation. And that dog had seen two people the first 6 months of his life. He got out of his kennel for 5 minutes, or that's what they say. I'm not even sure that happened, but 5 minutes once a day. He had never been off the property. He had never been away. And by the time I got him, he looked like a dog who had never been off the property. He was a
Mm.
mess. So every single thing I think about, like people like, well, what do you start with? Well, frankly, with that dog, I couldn't get him to take food from my hand, let alone lure. It took maybe 3 months to get him to take a lure. So, because he just didn't follow food, he would leave, he'd just leave. Um, so, what do I normally do with a puppy? Well, I start with luring. I start with platforms. I start with discs. So, I tried to get him on a platform. He ran away. So, like to talk about, what is your system? What is your foundation? Which dog? Some dogs, they just show a lot of upright energy and engagement with me early. So with those dogs, I'm probably going to start with healing and recalls and fun things. With this dog, I had him on leash in my own backyard because he would run away. I would have to trap him. That was the only way. I couldn't even get him out of a kennel without him running. So he wore a leash 24 hours a day. That is so outside my mental model. My dogs are almost always off leash, always. From the time they're 8 weeks old, always off leash, because in my mind, if the leash tightens, I failed engagement there. And this dog, I'm like, oh, he's now on a 50-foot long line. I still can't catch him if he gets loose. I mean, it was so, and I'm okay with that. Every dog is an individual. Where can I insert myself in this dog's life that I think will be comfortable for that dog and get me where I want to go eventually, so that we're on the same team? So I spend almost no time talking about systems. I talk about what's important to me and where I'd like to go eventually. And then I just try to work at it a little here, a little there until I'm happy.
And how do you visualize it in your head? Because I like to say consistency and structure, flexibility and execution. And it helps me when I think about a system in my head. I can look at a dog and I can say, okay, this dog needs a higher rate of reinforcement because the dog's distracted easily. Or this dog is very cautious and very fearful and unsure of their surroundings. So I'm going to spend more time building relationship with the dog, getting the dog comfortable with me, trying to do things that the dog enjoys, however long it takes before I move to the next step. But by having steps, it's always helped me visualize where I'm at with a dog. And then it helps me transfer that over to someone else. If I can see, as you said, I'm looking at them, it's like, okay, your dog's conditioned to markers, your luring is pretty nice. We could probably tweak it a little bit so you have more control. Your dog understands how to play with the toy, but maybe we haven't gotten a good out yet, or we haven't
Mm-hmm.
been able to use it to where the dog likes to bring the toy back. So I can see, okay, this is a stage that I'm on, and what do I like for this stage? Well, let's say with toys, and I'm the type of person when I'm using toys, I haven't really quite figured out yet to use toys to teach a lot of behaviors. I use luring for a lot of behaviors. And then once I can have the dog doing it and I'm going to start reinforcing with the toy, I build the drive for the toy, and then I teach the dog to drop it. I teach the dog to bring it to me so I can incorporate it into the game. But I haven't been able to get away from luring as an example and just using toys. I haven't quite figured that out yet. But that helps me visualize it in my head, so it makes it easier for me to transfer it over to the client or the student. How do you visualize it in your head so someone can see kind of what you're seeing?
It's hard. So when I train clients, I often don't work with them the way I work with my own dogs. So, for example, a very typical first lesson for a competition style student, we're going to work on toy play, session number one. We're going to work on one luring activity, maybe heel position, and we're going to work on one shaping activity. So, almost always I would start with those three things. The luring activity would probably be heeling or front position and helping the dog follow the lure. The toy thing is going to depend on what the dog is showing us. Maybe chasing a little tug rag type deal, or maybe a little retrieve. And I would start it in this tiny room, 8 by 10, so they could be off leash, nowhere to go. And then my shaping session is designed to show people how smart their dogs are, because people have no idea how smart their dog is. So I usually do it first, and then I have them do it. And I usually start with getting on an object like a platform. I'll shape it because I can usually do that in one session with a puppy. And when they see their dog look at me with, is this it? There's this look a dog gives you, and it's the same look people have. Is this it? And when they see their dog do that, you can almost see them go, holy shit, I hope I'm allowed to swear. That you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
see that change in their expression. They're like, oh my God, I know that look. That dog, that's the same look I have when I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, that's right. Your dog is plenty smart. And I want them to have that experience. So I build from there. I usually teach scent work very, very early. Not unusual for a puppy of my own or a client to have scent discrimination by about 4 months of age. Not unusual for them to have a retrieve. Not unusual for them to have a lot of behaviors, because I shape those behaviors because I want them to learn to do it. So a lot of emphasis on platforms and pivot discs. And from there, we're going to learn lure positions, because I have never figured out how to shape positions to the quality I'm looking for. So for things like that, I have to lure. Now, the puppy was very interesting because he wouldn't lure. I shaped things I have never shaped before, and it was hard. It was hard. But I am also seeing the benefits of having shaped things. I see that he understands things more cleanly. So I didn't have to get rid of the lure because there wasn't one. So that was kind of cool. Like, I never have used a lure with him in heel position. And yet his heeling is starting to look the same as all my dogs, which is generally quite good. I had to shape it with a hand target. And painful at first, faster over the long run.
When you're saying shaping, what do you primarily mean for those that aren't familiar with the term shaping?
It means setting up an environment that the dog will offer the thing I want. So super simple thing. Let's say you take a large platform and you put it in the hallway so the dog can't go around it. And then you throw a cookie. You're on one side of the platform, the dog's on the other. You throw a cookie down the hallway. So the dog goes and eats it. And when they come back to see you, they put a foot on the platform. You mark that. You can say yes or click or whatever you like. And then I throw another cookie back the way the dog came. And then I back up a tiny bit. So the dog starts to realize that when they put their foot on the platform is what causes me to mark. Then I wait for 2 feet on the platform. Then I let the dog come all the way onto the platform or mat or whatever. And when they get all 4 feet on, I click and throw the cookie back. And then I allow them to make a mistake. So up till then, it's what we would call errorless learning. I'm setting it up that the odds of them failing are very low, because it's set up in such a way that they can't go around. Then I start shrinking the platform so they can go around. And I actually want them to go around, because that's when they learn what's wrong. So marking tells them what's right. Trying again tells them what's wrong. And I just find that, like, if you set up a jump that way, a small jump, 4 inches, and you walk over it and the dog has nowhere else to go, the dog goes over it. I mark that, I throw a cookie. And then I start doing that till the dog is actually, I'm no longer going over it with the dog. And then I start putting it, 10 feet out to the side. With most dogs, in a few days, I can cause a dog to look for the jump, even if it's 10 feet away. They will seek it out to go over it because I'm going to throw a cookie and they know it. That's taught both by being right, going over it, and being wrong, going around it. So this is the time to teach that before I actually care. There's no words, there's no nothing. We're just in an environment. So my young puppy, the border collie, really loves to move. And so I taught him a send away. And now when I go out on my training, I open my front door and he just goes. And when I get there, without fail, he is sitting in the spot where we do the send away, because he has learned that that really works for him. So I go to that spot and I may reward him, or I just may go back to work. But it tells me how important it is. Or if I'd set up a jump, this isn't this dog, but with other dogs, if I set up a jump and I head to the field, they will just find a jump and go over it because they know that works for them. So that is something shaping gives me, is a dog that has a lot of initiative. So they're doing things all the time. My job is to then add structure and say, I love that send away, but we're going to stay first. And I incorporate that much, much earlier than most trainers I know, because I don't like dogs that randomly offer behaviors. It's not something I want to see. I don't mind it when they're young and when we're shaping, but I have a lot of structure between now we're shaping and now I'm cueing. Once I add a word to a behavior, you offering it will not cause me to reinforce. So if I have taught you the word jump and you offer jumps, I'm going to tell you how cute you are, but that's about it. Now I'm going to set you up, put you on a stay, and now I'm going to cue the jump, and now I'm going to reinforce. So that gets rid of that kind of random, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Because I really could live without that. And some dogs are super prone to that direction. But anyway, so that's something I would teach super early. But your original question, going back a bit, is my mental model. My mental model is behavior work first. And almost every dog needs behavior work of some type, So the border collie was sort of a screaming example of scared, insecure, shut down in a little shell kind of a dog. So I wasn't the least bit worried about training him. I was just worried about finding what made him happy. That was it. It was observing him and saying, what do you care about? You won't even eat if I'm in the room. He ate overnight. I had to put the food and leave. Fine, that's fine. People are like, why didn't you feed him? I'm like, what, starve him? He has bigger fish to fry. He needs to eat, right? So I just gave him his food and I left. So what does he care about? Well, he might care, but he does actually love food. He was just too scared to eat. But back then, no. Okay, how about toys? He'd never seen a toy. I don't think he'd ever put anything in his mouth. He'd never had anything. So, all right, well, I'm going to work on that. How about running? And at the end of the day, that was really the ticket. He has such a need to run. It's insane. I've never seen anything like it. He needs to run. So I found a space where he could run. He was safe. He was enclosed. And I had to look because he was looking for outlets to get out. So I had to make sure it was so safe. And I let him run and run and run. And then I ran with him, which is, by the way, not my idea of a good time. But I wanted to be a part of his game. So his behavior plan was about really finding what do you love so that I can use that in other environments. And then I built that from there. I don't do a lot of taking the dog lots of places if they're scared. I don't think that's the ticket. I think today, he's been here 6 months. I think today is the first day I've asked him to do something for me away from my house or my training building, because I was going somewhere and I had to stop anyway. And I'm like, well, let's just see what we have. And the only thing I did was take him out of the car and say drop, which means I'm going to drop a ball to your face. Took it back. That's all we did. So I let him pee and skulk for 5 minutes, which he did. And then I played drop game, and then I put him in the car. And frankly, I thought that was a fantastic introduction to new places. I think letting dogs stare excessively is not particularly useful or healthy. And taking dogs that are scared just makes them afraid to go in the car. So I wasn't in any hurry. First, I want to make sure you really, really are comfortable with me and that you come to me when I call you, not because I'm going to make you, not because I have any reinforcer, because you actually like me. That's a different type of recall. That's the informal, like we're friends, we just do things together recall. I wanted all that first so that when he did get skulky, he would come back to me. He's on leash, but he'd come back to me and I could say, you're fine. You're fine. Now go ahead, be a dog. And that's about all I give. I'm there. I pet, I pat. You're a good dog. Now go on, go do dog things. And then we went to work. So I tend to start with kind of a big picture assessment of what's the temperament of this dog. Zen, my Belgian, his temperament was, I'm going to do what I want. You're a rather small dot on my radar. Not because I'm scared, but because frankly, I have a lot of things that are interesting to do, like check out the environment. So my sort of standard teach a puppy a recall thing is I take them to this huge open space area I had access to, 400 yards, huge sight lines. I put them on the ground and we go for a walk. They're off leash and they do what they're going to do, but they don't want to die. So they tend to catch up to me, right? Fairly often. And Zen was the first dog I've ever had who said, yeah, I'm going to go this way. And it actually got to the point where rather than him going, oh shit, you're getting away and catching up to me, I turned around and was like, oh shit, and was running after him because he's like, yeah, I got other things to do. So it's probably the first puppy I've raised on leash. So for about a month, I kept taking him to that place, but he just couldn't be free because I had to teach a recall. I had to teach it with toys and food and like, there's a reason to come back to me. Whereas with most of my dogs, it's more of a relationship-based recall. It's like, hey, we're going this way. But his wiring, he's super attached to me now, but boy, that took a little work. So that's probably where I start is balancing the dog. Are you a dog with a lot of drive? Then I'm going to talk about control. Are you a dog with a lot of control? I'm going to let you show me a lot of energy and drive. So Zen was a lot of control day one. I knew he was going to bite things. I wanted him to bite things in a good way, bite toys, bite decoys. So the energy was right off the bat, control. I have not done one day of drive building in his life. He has never had a harness on. He has never done back tension because I was like, he's going to bite. He's bred to bite. Look at him. He bites. And the first time I put him on a decoy, he bit. I was like, there was just no question about it. The puppy who, for fun, if nothing else, I'm sort of putting basic ring sport skills on, was the polar opposite. So I'm not worried about control. And we're just play, just run. I don't care if you grab a toy out of my hand. Because we did get to the point where I realized he does have prey drive. He just doesn't know what to do with it. So we got that worked out. And then it was like, I'm not worried that you bit my hand. I'm not worried that you grabbed the toy between. I don't care about any of that. Just be, exist, move, play, build yourself up. And when I had that, then adding rules to the game really appealed to his brain because he's a border collie and they like rules. So then I went from there. So first I tend to think about who is this dog? And I'm kind of, if you're going to make really rough categories, is this a biddable dog or a mere independent dog? Is this a secure dog or is this an insecure dog? I have like big picture, is this a high energy dog or a low energy dog? And then from there, I'm just trying to balance the dog. I'm not into the more drive is better. I just want the right amount for what we're trying to do. Like, where's my balance point with this dog? Skills. If you're more of a luring dog, that's fine. I'm going to do that. But I need you to show me shaping. So I'm going to put that in there. But I'll start with your strength and then I'll get to my interests depending on what you're showing me. I found my Belgian very hard to shape. He was, I'm going to say dull for lack of a better word. He's sort of one of those Belgians that's kind of, I don't know how much you know about the protection lines, but he's like a big, heavy, slow maturing, plodding kind of guy. He's not like a French dog, like quick brain, quick movement. He's not like that. And so with him, shaping is like, he's just a little bit dull about it. He didn't have the quick responses. And so that's why I had to do it because I need him to be comfortable offering behaviors and not just sort of staring at the toy or the thing he wants. So I think when I say like train the dog in front of you, I mean, I really mean it. I'm super conscientious about that. And then for the rest of the dog's life, it's just a balancing act. How much motivation does this dog need? How much control does this dog need? How much environmental awareness? The Belgian's extremely environmentally focused. Very, very interested in everything. What I tell people is he loves me to bits, but I'm only one interest among many. He has many interests. The border collie, as he comes out of his shell, he has one interest, and that's me. And that's just a very different dog. It's a very different way of thinking. It's a very different approach to training and what you do. So with Zen, generalization is really important. I haven't done nearly enough, but it's very important. With the border collie, I don't think it's going to be important. I think when he gets into his little working mode, he's just going to work. So, I mean, we'll see. But that's what I try to do is balance out what they have. And with clients, it's, where do you want to go? What are you trying to do? How much dog do you actually want? Some people don't like what I like. I like dogs that are just kind of on the edge. I don't like dogs that are super calm, even though it's higher scoring in most of my sports. I kind of like a little more flash. What do you want? And then I try to help you get there.
And I like that saying too, train the dog in front of you. For me, as I was saying, I do like to have structure, but it's consistency and structure, flexibility, and execution. You know, we don't always need the dog to be really high drive depending on the goals of the owner. I mean, if you're training a service dog, you don't want that dog super amped up all the time. You just want the dog to be able
No.
to do its job. And earlier you mentioned errorless learning or errorless training. It's errorless learning, right? Or is it errorless training?
Yeah. Either one is fine.
I use errorless learning and I've heard people criticize it, but I've always had a lot of success with it. So it made me think about where you're talking about putting the place in the hallway so the dog can't go around it.
Hmm.
This is the
Yeah.
first way I learned to teach a dog how to do jumps, whether it be for agility
Hmm.
or a protection sport. We would do what this was something I learned from Tom Rose. He called it a jump shoot. And we would have the
Hmm.
wall, and then we would put ring
Hmm.
gates next to the wall, and then we would put jumps
Hmm.
equally spaced all the way down. And we would run down it and have the puppies follow us, and they would
Hmm.
figure out their timing because the distance was equal and
Hmm.
they weren't able to go around it. And I even did the same thing when I was doing retrieves over an A-frame. I would put ring gates, and so
Hmm.
their only option is to
Hmm.
go over the A-frame. And by doing repetition after repetition, the moment I removed the ring gates, the dogs didn't even consider going around
Hmm.
it. What are your thoughts overall on errorless learning? Do you think it is something that people should incorporate? Because I think one of the issues before I finish the question is I think a lot of times when someone is to, in a sense, criticize it, it's because they're looking at it in isolation, where it's like the whole system's not errorless learning. There's certain things that we do in that sort of format because it helps us be more successful, but it's not like we're not doing any sort of problem solving, because you're even talking a little bit about free shaping, right? And that
Hmm.
has mistakes in it, but the dog gets the rewards as they get closer to the right picture.
Yeah. I teach as much as I can with errorless learning. So it doesn't matter if I'm luring or whatever. I really try to set up circumstances for success. And as a general rule, if I don't think my dog understands something very well, I won't tell them when they make a mistake. It's the same thing I do with people. So the other day I did a send away with my puppy and I couldn't find I usually use this foot target. I didn't have it. So I put out this round fitness ball thing and I was like, that should be fine. And I put that out and I marked and I gave the cue for go away. And he went out and he hesitated when he got there and he grabbed it and he brought it back. So he thought it was a retrieve, even though we've never retrieved that object. And I did not say a word. I thanked him for giving it to me. I reinforced. I gave him his ball. I made a mental note, fixed that, and we went on. So he thought he was right, and I would much rather have a dog that tries than a dog who waits to be right,
Mhm.
because I want dogs that they react quickly. So I don't want them saying I don't want to be wrong. I just want the dog saying I'm sure I'm right. I'm always right. And I reinforce that, and then I set it up so that's not going to, I mean, it was simple to fix it. Just don't put it back out. Like that's not a hard one. So then I immediately did exactly the same exercise again with the proper target. In his own brain, on some level, I'm sure he went, I bet this is what she wanted the first time. And that's fine, because frankly, I want him to retrieve all objects because of the kinds of sports I do. So I don't ever want him to think, okay, new object, don't retrieve it. Got it. I don't want that. I want a wide repertoire of options. So I asked myself, have I set this up correctly? So I'm doing some healing with him now. And sometimes when we start, he'll leave me and go around a pole because I'm often working around poles. And I've also taught him to circle poles. So he gets it's wrong, but it just doesn't matter. So if he circled the pole because we were moving towards it and it was 5 feet away, I'm not going to say a word. He's going to come back to me. I'm going to reconnect with the hand target. I'm now going to circle, make exactly the same circle, but this time 10 feet from the pole. He's not going to go around the pole at 10 feet. He stays in heel position. I reinforce that. By the end of the session, I'm probably, frankly, 1 foot from the pole and he's not going around it. Never did I tell him what was wrong. I just set things up to show him what is right. And that's how I teach everything. Now, eventually, I will have a dog who's trained. And I know they know healing. And I will set them up to make the error. So I will intentionally take my very well-trained dog. I will do 10 send around as a pole in a row. I will now call my dog into healing, and I will heal within 6 inches of that pole. And if my dog goes around it, I'm like, what you doing? What you doing? I bring the dog back in heel position, and I try it again. They're going to get it right this time. I reinforce. So now what they learned is not only what's right, but they actually do learn what's wrong. Just by my attitude, I'm like, since when? Right? Like, since when is did you seriously just do what I think you did? Because that would be more of a, we're doing directed jumping. I clearly gave you the correct signal. You clearly went around the wrong one. And then I just like, since when? So that one, I don't make a game out of it, but they know what that means and they'll get it right the next time. When I think the dog, it's more of an honest error of, we've done so many go around the poles. I bet this is go around the pole. That's more of a silly, come on, let's do it again. And we do it again very fast. So I want the right and the wrong to be within seconds of each other so that the dog can compare and say, oh, that's what she meant. And then I might spend the rest of my session doing everything on the planet to scrape the dog off on that pole, to run at the pole and halt, to run at the pole and make an about turn or whatever. And by the end of the session, my dog probably is not going to go around a pole just because it's out there. So that's kind of how it really does depend. How much does this dog know and where are we at in this dog stage of training? How complex am I making it at this point?
Well, do you have an example that would be something that the average pet person would want? The people that just want to sit down, come, go to your bed, stay loose leash walking.
Yeah. Like, how about don't get off that dog bed if you're on place? So you send the dog to the dog's place and you feed him a billion cookies there, right? Over a few days. You just make it the best place in the world. And then you intentionally drop a cookie off the dog bed. And when the dog goes for it, you scoop it up and you say, what you doing? You get up on that bed. And then you drop that cookie on the dog bed. And this time they do it and you're like, you are so clever, good puppy. And you give them 5 cookies on the dog bed. You pick up the one you dropped off it and you throw it at them. And within very short order, you're going to be throwing cookies all over that room and the dog is going to stay on the dog bed.
And when you do throw it, are you making sure that you're able to prevent the dog from getting it if they do go for it? So like making sure if they get off, you can stop them so they don't reward themselves?
No, I don't care. I'll
Oh,
just
so
be
even
like,
if they get it,
actually,
it's fine. They'll still.
you know what? Frankly, they'll learn anyway. As my friend said, that was unauthorized. So I can give an example of my dog taking a toy that was unauthorized. And you can see it. It's on Facebook because it's unedited, and I showed that. So basically, I said, stay through the ball, and we had done several repetitions. And I got to this one. I said, stay, and I guess he decided it was a little too long. So he ran and he got the ball. And I just let him get it and called him back and said, what you doing? But I was walking towards him, which is a different picture. Normally, he brings it back. It was very mellow, and I was cheerful about it. What you doing? And I took the ball and I said, that was unauthorized, and kind of patted his head and put him back up on the platform and did it again. And he was fine. So he already at 90% knows that behavior. Now, if this was the very first time I was throwing a cookie off the dog bed, I first of all wouldn't throw it. I would place it. And I would keep my hand
Mm.
there and reward the dog. So I would set the dog up for success. But let's say at some point the dog's like, I can't stand it, and came off that dog bed and went for the cookie. I would just let the dog get it and say, what you doing? That's not right. Put them up on the dog bed. Do it again with a little bit easier, whatever that means, and then reinforce the dog, because that particular exercise is one I used to do a lot in seminars. And it was very common for dogs to make a mistake and the next time to do it correctly, because you could almost see them kind of going, I don't think that was right. Like you can just tell, because the person has a stutter. Like they don't act quite the same. There's a little stutter in their response. And they're like, okay, because I'm like, don't make a big deal out of it. Just bring the dog back. But the dog knows that that's not how things go when you're in flow. And flowing from exercise to exercise, dogs feel that and they drive for that. That's a reinforcer. So when there's a stutter, they're like, okay, you didn't love that. So with super sensitive dogs, I don't even stutter. I go out of my way. It's like, you don't even need to know that went wrong. It's not your business. That's my problem. With more sturdy dogs, then the stutter becomes the correction. So that's my kind of my healing correction. If you go out of position, I sort of stutter back and in, and the dog goes, oh, that doesn't feel right to me. And then they hopefully improve from there.
And that's why you said the relationship is so important, because when you have a strong relationship, they're more willing, or they want to work with you in a sense. They do want to make you happy because it makes them happy. It kind of goes back and forth in that sort of sense. When I tell people about building a relationship, I'm like, let's not try to complicate it too much. Think about when you were a kid. What would you do if you were going to hang out with a friend? You'd say, hey, what do you want to do today? What do you want to do today? You try to do things that ideally both people, or in this case, a dog and the human, like to do together. Now, if your dog likes doing things that maybe you don't like to do, I would still try to do things the dog likes. Like maybe I don't like playing fetch. Maybe I rather play tug, but the dog likes playing fetch. So I'm going to play fetch because the dog is starting to associate this fun, exciting experience with me, which of course builds the relationship. I'm curious, you said earlier before we started, I think it was before we started, that you're going to be competing this weekend. Do you mind if I ask what sport you're competing in this weekend?
Mondio ring.
Oh, Mondio ring. Very nice. Is it a club trial?
Yeah, well, it's a trial I didn't know about until yesterday at 3 o'clock. And my dog hasn't been on a decoy in 6 months. He's been coming back from rehab, but you know what? Trials are few and far between. So the way I'm looking at this, he's got one leg on his Mondio ring one. You know, he's not a dog that it's going to matter if he doesn't do well. He's not a dog who's going to just suddenly go wildly out of control. He may well not qualify, but the way I'm looking at it is this is information. So, like if somebody said, what's the downside? In this case, in many cases, there are huge downsides to trialing a dog like that. But I don't see a downside. I think I'm going to get some really good information about the work I've done. He's had several procedures done because of injuries in the last 6 months, but rehab is done. We've done a lot of work strengthening him, and we just haven't gotten back to the biting yet. But I'm like, you know what? He knows how to bite. In the trials we've been in, the biting is not the problem. I think he's lost like a point total in the biting. I'm the problem. I get handler errors like there's no tomorrow. And obedience is a nightmare, which is ironic because I'm supposed to be good at that. But he has massive arousal issues. So I've really been working that arousal. So I want to see what I have, even though I haven't really finished that process of working through the arousal in new places. I'm just looking at it as a baseline. If we qualify, that's super. That would be great. But what the hell? No time like the present is kind of how I'm looked at it. Well, you know what? It's down the street, it's only a couple hours away. And we're going to see. He's not going to bite a decoy till we're in the trial. So that'll be, welcome back, right?
I like that you're taking pressure off yourself, which in turn takes pressure off the dog, which I think is important. And I like how you said when the dog would make a mistake, it almost sounds like you're joking where you're like, oh, what are you doing, buddy? Get back there. But I like that because it doesn't produce any sort of fear. And something that I've also noticed quite a bit, even when I'm doing a seminar, I don't like, I'm not an advocate of yelling at dogs. I don't like that because I don't like that it puts a dog into a state of fear. Now they're worried about the threat, of course, depending on the sensitivity level of the dog. I just like certain things to be signals. It's just that form of communication. And there's been so many times where I'm working with someone on a stay, something very basic, and the dog breaks the position and the person starts to yell. I'm like, whoa, whoa, relax. We don't need to be yelling at the dog because now your dog is worried about that instead of focusing on actually learning. And for me, that's one of the most common mistakes that I see when it comes to working with basic pet obedience with pet clients. What are some of the most common mistakes you see as well with the overall population that handles dogs, not dog trainers or people that compete, but the average pet owner?
Massive inconsistency. One day the dog can walk out the door with them without permission. The next day the dog gets yelled at for it. I think because from their brain, well, the first day didn't matter because there was no UPS truck in the driveway. Like he could have gotten killed. But I understand that. But the dog can't recognize the context cues that you are recognizing. I don't think people are very good at, yeah, but today it matters. Well, yes, but that's not really, So when it doesn't matter, you give 17 cues to come back. And when it does matter, you're mad because they didn't come back the first time. But that's kind of So I think dog trainers get a lot better at recognizing that if you ask, you need to follow up. I remember a lady came to my house once and she was eating pizza and she was sitting on the floor and my dog was basically drooling on her lap. And I said, if you don't like that, tell him, it was a her, tell her to lie down. So she did. She told the dog to lie down. She finished her pizza, and the dog did. She finished her pizza. She went to the kitchen. I said, you never let my dog get up. So in her mind, she had solved her problem with lie down. So when the problem is over, the dog is now allowed to get up. But the problem is, if that's your way of approaching things in life, then the dog is always guessing about, now do I get up? And then if the dog had gotten up early and she didn't want, now what you going to do? Yell, no, lie down? So it's like that ability to be consistent. If you started a cue, you have to end the cue. Like, what are you doing together? I think that's kind of a big deal. If I do correct my dogs, especially as a pet dog, and this is kind of interesting, I am all about the emotional correction, which is really funny because most dog trainers are like, no, they should be unemotional. I'm like, fuck that. If I have a relationship with somebody and I'm really happy with you, my God, you're going to know it. And if I'm really angry with you, my God, you're really going to know it. So that's how I treat my dog. The way I do my competition training is very different than the light. So if I'm out with my dog and they're just running around the stretch and they see a cow, because I'm often in places with a lot of livestock, and they start running at that cow and they know they're not supposed to run at that cow. And I'm like, hey, don't do that. I don't want to see that. I'm disappointed. Don't do that. That to me is an emotional correction. It is telling them that thing you just did right now, you know not to chase those cows, right?
Mm.
And it works because my dogs are quite sensitized to me because of how I train them. I prefer that to because they're not afraid of me. I've yet to see that. And it's not a physical correction. It's a breach in the relationship correction. And at the same time, when I'm really, really happy, I see my dog look at the cow, look at me and run back. I'm like, who's the best dog on the planet, right? So I have a lot of range that I use with my voice around daily life. If I need you to stop barking at the window and I don't have time to train it because I'm doing something, I'm like, enough of that. Like, it's an emotional thing. It's a correction. If I'm in a better place, then maybe I'll actually train it, because the problem with the emotional corrections of the type I just described, they have no impact on the next day. I mean, they stop the behavior, that's fine. Yeah, it's just a management technique. If I, tell my dog to knock that off. Now, the cow thing would be a little different because he knows he's not supposed to do it. But the barking at the windows, have I ever really taught my dogs not to bark at the windows? Apparently not. Like, I've definitely reduced the intensity by things I did when they were young, but I haven't maintained it appropriately. But the cow thing, I'm often in cow territory and he knows he's not supposed to do that. So most of
Mm.
the time he's pretty good, but every once in a while it's like, but it's right there. Like, yeah, don't mess with the cow. So that's an emotional correction.
And so context really matters, right? And I want to bring that up because a lot of times when we teach, at least for me, I teach in a very, I don't want to say generalized, but I like what Michael Ellis says. He says we teach in guidelines because there are so many gray areas within dog training. So if I tell someone, try not to yell at your dog, well, if they're not doing it all the time, the moment the dog does go running after the cow or the dog does go running towards the street or is about to do something, because I will yell at my dogs in a moment where it's needed. And because my dogs don't hear it every day, when they hear it, they're like, oh, and they'll respond. And it could be something that's used in a situation for safety. And I also understand where you
Yeah.
say, my dog can understand if I'm upset by something, because I'll do things like that as well. There's trainers out there that will say, don't talk to your dogs. I don't know. I talk to my dogs all the time. But when I'm talking to them, I'm not expecting them to do something. I'm not giving them a full sentence and expecting them to do something. It's just because they're my friends, and I see my dog, my Malinois, back here, and I'll be like, all right, what do you got going on, baby girl? And I'll go give her a kiss on the head, and then we'll walk around and she'll look at me. And I'm not expecting anything. I do really like that you brought up consistency, because I do think that's also something where a lot of people have issues, is being consistent. But I think a lot of times too, they don't realize that they're not being consistent. For example,
They
with
don't.
my own dogs, yeah, there's times where I'm lazy, let's say, and I don't want to follow through with something. And this is what I'll teach my clients and my students. If you don't, or you're not willing to follow through, if you tell your dog to do something, you're not willing to follow through to make sure that they do it with some sort of assistance if they need it, but you're just making sure they do it, then don't give them the command. And what I do in that situation is I will do what I call informal communication, or informal sort of commands, where if the dog doesn't listen, it's not a big deal. So if I tell the dog, hey guys, come on, let's go, pups. Hey, pup, 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 come on, come on, come on. Yeah, nice job. If they don't listen, it's not the end of the world. I didn't damage like a formal come when called. And you just said, yeah, a lot of times they don't realize they're being inconsistent. What are some of the most common ones that you see where they're not being consistent with what they want? I think the stay was a really good example too, with the pizza. That's super common. Not exactly that.
Stay is very, very common. The other thing is just sort of, they call the dog and then they disconnect. It's like, it doesn't really work that way. Like, what you said there is exactly how I get through life. I have formal cues. Do the thing. It's very specific. They know it. I'm looking at them. It's, and then there's, hey, up, let's go this way. But even so, when the up comes this way, something is happening. So maybe I'm continuing to walk and move. That tells them that we're just changing our direction. But if I stand still, what I'm telling them is come all the way in. I think a lot of people don't think about that too much. And it's really about, did it solve my problem in this moment? And if it did, they see that as the end of the behavior. So the dog can't figure that out. I think recalls and stays. And I remember once being at a party or something, and somebody brought a dog. I don't generally tell people I'm a dog trainer. I mean, I don't mind. And if they ask them, I'll talk about dogs forever. But I often just,
Yeah.
because I want to hear what they have to say. I'm always interested in how other people perceive dogs, dog training, dog behavior. So when I have the opportunity to just say, "Oh yeah, is your dog trained?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah. How'd you train your dog?" I sent him to a board and train. How'd that work for you? Like, I'm going to do that. And I'll say, "Well, how did it hold up? Now?" And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then they want to show me, right? So I get a lot of information at those moments as I'm watching them go sit, 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 and then push the dogs. And it's not good or bad. If they're happy with their dog, I don't care. But as long as they understand that they're causing that behavior. The reason it takes four
Mhm.
cues is that how many you give. If that's not a problem for you, it's not a problem for me. But don't make it the dog's problem tomorrow because now you care for whatever reason you care. Like, just be somewhat consistent and recognizing it. And I just think that takes a lot of time to really
Mhm.
develop that consistency. Probably people who have kids have an easier time of it because we talk about it a lot in that context.
Mhm.
Or maybe not. Maybe people with kids struggle too. But it's something I'm aware of. If I say I'm going to give you something like a candy off the counter, you can't then come up and take it. Like, it's still in my brain. And it's the same with the dog. It's like, I'm going to give you that, but I'm not going to give it to you now. So if you then wander over and take it later and I don't care anymore, I'm still going to, even if I didn't care, it's like, no, 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 you can't help yourself when I told you not to take that. So if something fell to the ground and I said, that's not for you, then I really do expect you not to take that, even if it sits there. It's not now that it's no, it's just no. If I change my mind, I will pick it up and I'll say you can have that now. And they understand that.
And I think one of the big ones is having the dogs on the furniture. People ask me about it all the time. They say, "Is it okay for my dogs to be on the furniture?" And I say, "You tell me if it's okay for the dogs to be on the furniture." And I know some trainers say, "Well, I don't want them to have their dogs on the furniture because we're building structure." And to me, I'm like, it's your dog. If you want the dog on the furniture, have the dog on the furniture. But be fair with the way that you have the rules. Don't allow your dog on the furniture all the time. And then your dog comes in with muddy paws, jumps on the furniture, and now you start yelling at him because the dog's not going, "Oh, it's because I have muddy paws." No, the dog was allowed on the furniture all the time. And now suddenly you're punishing the dog. So either make sure your dog's paws are clean before you let them in, or only allow them on when you invite them. But then you have to be consistent. Don't have the dog jump up one day and you go, "Oh, it's okay, it's fine." And then the next day, punish the dog for jumping up. Or, of course, having the dogs on the furniture becomes a problem, like the dog starts resource guarding it, then we can address that as well. But what are your thoughts on things like having the dog on the bed or having the dog on the furniture?
You know what? If you're happy, I'm happy. So I have mixed rules in my house. It depends on the dog. My small dog is sleeps in the bed. He's an old little short-haired terrier thing. I don't care. Sleeps in the bed. He's allowed on all furniture. Not only is he allowed on the furniture, if you really want to be appalled, he walks across like my coffee table. I don't care. He's 10 pounds. It just doesn't make any difference. My Belgian is allowed on, actually, this is interesting. He's allowed on furniture in the family room. He is not allowed on my bed, and he's not allowed on furniture in the living room. He has no trouble understanding that. It's context. This is the room where you can kind of do what you want. The border collie is allowed on no furniture whatsoever. And the reason is he's a herding dog and he's filthy more often than not. I don't want
Mhm.
him on my furniture. So it depends on the dog. And actually, what you said, it totally reminded me. People let puppies jump on them because they're cute and they're little. And then the stupid puppy goes and grows. And now they're yelling at the puppy for the same behavior that they actually encouraged. Or it's like, it's okay if you jump on me, but then the dog is jumping on grandma and now you're mad. It's like, well, if you give your dog a lot of freedom like that, that's fine. But when grandma comes over, dog needs to be in a crate or on a down, or you need some obedience cues that you can use that tell the dog you're doing this, just any incompatible behavior, whatever you want, sit or whatever you like, to tell the dog the difference. And I like that you brought up the issue of if problems come up. My Belgian is a whole lot of dog. He's just a lot of dog. He's not a friendly dog. He likes me. That's kind of it. And he's guardy of space and he's guardy of me. And at 7 months of age, he got up on the couch and I realized I was watching how he's watching people come in the room and he was starting, I could feel it, that puffing up. And I was like, all right, that's it. So he was off the couch for the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. It's like, if you're going to do that, then you're not going to be on the furniture. But I actually still let him on furniture. I just gave him a different piece of furniture across the room that was his. And then it just became, you go there. And to this day, I tell people, if he's on the couch, tell him to get off. And then you sit on the couch, and he's not allowed on the couch if you're on it, because that elevation thing for him matters. There's a status thing there. And it's like, if you want to sit on the couch, you're welcome to the couch. Tell him to get off. You sit down, tell him to stay off. And that is fine. Dogs can understand context, but the context cues need to be clear. And then, like, my kid will be like, well, he'll be fine. I'm like, no. The rule is that if you are on the couch, he gets off the couch. If you want the couch, he gets off the couch. And he's the kind of dog, being a Belgian, he sort of does well with being told what to do. But it needs to be clear. It needs to be consistent, because he's also give an inch, take a mile kind of guy. And if I don't like something I see, you need to go sit on your personal piece of furniture over there. And it was, I used food to train it and all, but it may not be his preference, but it's safer. So with some dogs, you just kind of have to look at who they are and ask yourself, like the Border Collie, there's zero chance he would ever start resource guarding a room. But I can see how with the Belgian, it starts with the couch, and then it becomes the space around the couch, and then it becomes the room. It will generalize because he enjoys guardy behavior. So it's like, well, then, nip that one in the bud, and we don't have to worry about it. So people, well, did he ever do anything? Well, no, that's the point. Like, you pay attention and you see those little signs of getting a little bit taller and bigger, and the head coming up and the eyes get hard, and he starts watching people in the room. That's when you need to get involved, not when the dog comes shooting off the couch, or even now, like if he walks in the room, sometimes he's just a little too puffed up for my taste. And I'm like, then you need to go sit on your bed. Not even credit. No, you have to show control. Go sit over there, because I don't like it when you're all puffed up like that around people. People don't like that. It's intimidating. People have the right to walk through this. This is our house, not yours. So up you go. And he gets it. He's very cheerful about, oh, okay, I got to go sit on my thing. Okay, fine.
And that's very important too, because certain dogs, like what you're describing, if they were to practice that behavior, that could be, internally or intrinsic motivator, where even if you were to, let's say, correct the dog, but maybe just the charge and the excitement of doing the behavior becomes reinforced. And then that becomes even harder to end up breaking in the future. And I think that's a very important point. And being able to adjust according to the dog. Now, I think it's safe to assume that you're not the same trainer today as you were 10 years ago. How do you continue to evolve as a trainer? What are you learning right now? What are your focuses right now?
You know what? Anybody who wants to become a better dog trainer, I would strongly recommend you take up a dog sport that requires your dog to work in a public space off leash at some level. You pick your sport. I don't care which one. Your dog has to work off leash in a public space, because you are going to learn without reinforcement. You are going to learn how to get reinforcement off the body. You are going to learn how to deal with focus and distraction. You are going to learn how to drop reinforcement or corrections, if that's where you're going with it, all together to get there. And what happens is events have rules. So if you don't like teaching something, you don't have the option of saying, well, I don't like doing the downstay, so I'm not going to do that. You have to learn how to do it. You have to learn how to do it when your dog gives you grief. Every dog on the planet is going to give you grief about something in the sport that you're going to be like, God, if I only just didn't have to do this healing under distraction or whatever it is. Because I've done a lot of dog sports over time, like kind of pretty much everything, over a long period of time, every time I pick up a new sport, so now it's herding, I'm learning new things at a new level, and it just forces a whole direction of learning that maybe I don't want to learn. Like sometimes I don't want to learn a thing. It's hard. My current Belgian is giving me fits because of the arousal matter. He gets so high. And so I'm learning how to use things like fitness to help him settle. I'm learning he wouldn't take food at all not too long ago. And now he's taking food. That's a big deal. He'll take food in public. I'm learning how to split exercises such that, like, it's not sit, stay, fetch, because that just blows his mind, right? So now it's sit, stay, we go do healing and obedience, we heal over to the toy, now fetch, right? So learning how to split things down. I think it's hard to beat dog sports and a variety of dog sports for forcing your skills to develop. And it gets you past the, well, I could do it if I wanted to. Yeah, maybe. And it gets you past the, well, this is how you should do it. people are very good at telling other people what's wrong with their training. And I'm like, that's a bit much. Like, if you're in my sport and you've dealt with my kind of dog in my kind of circumstance, then we can have a conversation and I'll seek you out. But if you've not done my kind of sport with my kind of dog, because the dogs I have had historically have been so radically different from each other that it's not actually even that helpful for me to say, well, my last dog got 100 points in her Mondio 1 obedience routine. Yeah, but this is not the same dog, you know?
Mhm.
So recognizing that what you did with the last dog is not this dog. So the more sports you do, the more different dogs you get your hands on, the more you're going to grow. And I think because I love dog sports, each dog I get is like, well, new problems, new possibilities, new sports. And I think that really forces. I'm also in an academic, I own a dog training school online. And so I'm constantly flooded with ideas. And there are so many really, really interesting things happening right now about, balancing choice and structure. The dopamine box is really picking up speed in my school in some really interesting ways that go way beyond the behavior. So just one thing that comes to mind is the person who's working with it said, Denise, this is really interesting because not only is it helping the dog with the specific skill that we're struggling with, the dog isn't having problems with nail trims anymore. And the issue had nothing to do with nail trims, nothing. So the dog's issue had to do with hyperarousal in public around other dogs. What the hell has that got to do with nail trims in the house? But it did. And so that kind of thing fascinates me. So now everybody in the school is like looking at this and going, why? And how can we use this? How can we expand it? What other areas do we have? Like simple things like doing a lot of competition training, I find sensitizes my dogs to me in the house. So it makes them better, not necessarily when I'm training, it just makes them more aware. So that would be an indirect benefit. So an indirect benefit of running a dog training school online with lots of very smart people is I'm constantly being exposed to things that they find interesting and talking about them and exploring the options, the directions we might go. And I love that. I really think that's interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's fantastic. And it's one of the things that I really appreciate about my early start of my career, where I did a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but it helped me understand dog training more, like tracking, for example. I know people love tracking. Tracking wasn't my
Mhm.
favorite thing, but I had to do it.
Yeah,
And then I learned more about it
yeah,
because doing that.
yeah.
So I think that's really important, especially for professional trainers that want to continue to be better. Now, for those that want to learn from you or maybe want to attend your school, where can they find you?
I'm super active on Facebook. So I hang out with the old people. So my name is Denise Fenzi. And if you follow my wall, I put out so much free content, it's ridiculous. Instagram, I have a presence. I don't do as much with my wall, but I do a lot of lives and I do have a podcast. So it's Fenzi Food for Thought. Everything I do on my Instagram lives, I do move over. And I talk about everything. I mean, I often talk about what I'm struggling with my own dogs and how I'm thinking about it. So that's interesting. I'll talk about, things that happen in life with my dogs, how they get along, what I do with problems, or if I see my young dog is a resource guarder. So what kinds of stuff do I look at with that? Um, those are probably the best. And then my online school is Fenzi Dog Sports Academy. And we hold, I don't know, 30 classes a term. It's a big school, webinars every week, and a little of everything for kind of everything.
Well, thank you again so much for taking the time today. This has been fantastic. I'm going to make sure all the links are in the description. So if anyone's interested, they can go down there and find you on your social media as well as your school. And for everyone else, remember, we're working with our dogs on the same team towards a common goal. Thanks again.